Right, I was going to cover the Eton College free speech situation, but this is more important and infuriating. You all remember the BLM protests a few months ago, supported by the media, Labour Party, and even this government, because they literally did the bare minimum possible to stop it and spent most of the time going after the army vets who went down there to protect the statues. You might remember the Telegraph article Boris Johnson wrote that I covered at the time, attacking the vets who stood up for our fallen heroes, which we all know is something Boris Johnson lacks the spine to do, the lily-livered coward. His axe wound has more nutsack than he does at this point. And I guess also relative to this story is Boris Johnson saying criminals defacing our statues would get 10 years in prison. Do you all remember that? Well, guess what? He was talking shit. If it was a white anti-lockdown protester, then maybe 10 years would be the going rate. But BLM protesters trying to burn flags on our war memorials walk out the front door. What pisses me off even more is remembering back to the guy who pissed next to the police officer's memorial during the counter-protest who got 14 days in prison for it. I would say defacing war memorials is far worse than pissing next to the police officer's one, because he did not actually piss on it, remember. He pissed next to it in the corner as you can see in the picture, so no urine actually even touched it. But this little tit we have here actually climbed the monument and tried to set the flags on fire and gets to walk free from court. It's beyond taking the piss at this point. The Daily Mail has picked up on it, so let's take a quick look at that though. Now I'm not going to bother reading the headline because it's a whole story in and of itself and doesn't really matter. The main part of the story is he got let off with a conditional discharge. A photography student who tried to torch a Union Jack on the Cenotaph during a Black Lives Matter protest avoided jail today despite being accused of disrespecting his ancestors. Fuck his ancestors. Ashraful Sang, 19, was filmed using a lighter to try and set the flag on fire during the anti-racism protests on Whitehall in London, before being coaxed down by police and arrested. Sang of Birmingham, who could have been jailed for up to 18 months today, twice tried to torch the flag after climbing the war memorial on June 7th. Video footage of what happened brought veterans to tears, but Sang could not light the flag because it was made to anti-flammable EU standards. He told the police when he was arrested, "I didn't rip it, I tried to set fire to it." Yeah, because that's alright, you little fucking tit. An impact statement was read in court today by the judge from Asman Bibi, whose grandfather was in the Indian Merchant Navy during the First World War. She said the cenotaph represents people of all colours and creeds who stood up to the Nazis. I feel this person disrespected his ancestors too. Half the world came together to stand up against racism. Fuck all of that bollocks. This, at the end of the day, is the UK National War Memorial. That is all that fucking matters. He disrespected our soldiers at the end of the day. The courts should be giving maximum punishment out for this sort of shit. But yes, I suppose I should admit that the cenotaph is supposed to represent all those who have died in conflict fighting against many of our enemies. It's not just for one or the other. But the reason why people are pissed off now is because this is the UK National War Memorial and these are our honoured dead. And obviously, with the news we have here, the courts are just pissing all over them. It says here, Sang admitted attempted arson at Southwark Crown Court over the incident on June 7th and was given a 2-year conditional discharge and told to pay £340 in costs. So essentially, all this has cost him is 340 quid. We all know what the protest was supposed to be sparked over. It was a load of bollocks and had nothing to do with the UK anyway. Shanice Mahmood prosecuting said demonstrators were showing aggressive behaviour towards police, and as they reached alongside of the cenotaph, missiles and bottles were being thrown at them. What are you talking about? The BBC said this was mostly peaceful protesters. How can they be aggressive towards the police? That, I'm sure the BBC will be saying later on, is fake news by this prosecutor. It goes on though, the defendant was at the front of the group and he was being hostile and aggressive. They could see he was aggressive, confrontational and was swinging his arms. Oh, so maybe he was trying to clump the coppers in the face, yet he still deserves a conditional discharge. Once again proving, as the title says, two-tier system and two-tier policing. It goes on, the defendant had to be held back several times. Mr. Sang decided to climb on top of the cenotaph amongst the flags because he's a fucking wanker. There were protesters encouraging him to stop what he was doing. He was hanging on the flags. At this stage, Mr. Sang had a lighter in his hand. Sang attempted to set the Union Jack alight. As I said earlier, we already know it's made to EU standards that mean nothing burns. Perhaps there is a certain irony there, quipped the judge, Christopher Heyer, or whatever the fuck his name is. This judge needs to be investigated into what the fuck he thinks he's doing here. How can you justify giving someone such a piss-poor sentence when someone at the same event did arguably less and has ended up with a 14-day prison sentence? Sang then climbed halfway up the pole, holding the flag, causing it to swing before sliding back down on the top of the plinth. the court heard. As police officers tried to coax him down, Sang once again tried to burn the flag. He was then seen throwing a bag to a female friend before agreeing to come down if the police let her out of the cordon. Oh, I wonder why you wanted to let her out of the cordon with that bag. What did it have in it, mate? I wonder if the police actually bothered to do a stop and search. I'm willing to bet not, through fear of being called racist. It continues though. When officers tried to arrest him, he linked arms with her to resist before finally being apprehended. On arrest, he told officers, "I didn't rip it, I tried to set it on fire." Judge Herr read 12 victim impact statements from war veterans and civilians before passing sentence and said, "The inevitable starting point is to say he is sorry." So you literally read 12 victim impact statements, including from war veterans, and you still decided that he shouldn't go to prison. This judge is fucking unbelievable. Nathaniel Wade, defending Sang, said the teenager wishes to apologise. He added, "The irony perhaps is that he doesn't seek to tie anything he did to the cause of systemic prejudice. Because maybe he wasn't down there for BLM, he was just down there to have a tear-up and thought he would attack the statue." It goes on, it had nothing to do with it, and the irony is that he recognises that he did damage to issues raised by the veterans and members of the public concerned with the commemoration of war dead, but also the cause of addressing systemic prejudice. No, you haven't really hurt any of them, that's just a load of toff at the end of the day. All you've done is made yourself look like a cunt and possibly made hundreds if not thousands of enemies around the country. It goes on, the irony is to set those two causes against each other, when we heard from Miss Bibby that they are aligned. No, people are not realistically aligned with BLM. They are aligned with the fact that black lives obviously matter, but that goes without saying for every single life. I'm still yet to hear anyone roaming around saying that these lives don't matter. Except, of course, to the politicians of this world. Our lives don't matter to them, but that's a completely different story. The student had also claimed that he didn't know the significance of the Cenotaph, then he's a fucking idiot. Judge Herr told Sang, in some countries, trying to set fire to the national flag while on top of a national war memorial would put you in very considerable peril or danger indeed. You are fortunate to be a citizen in this country in the UK. The committing of this offence in a liberal democracy where justice is administered impartially and fairly. Well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't consider what you've done here, Judge, to be impartial or fair, especially when you consider the guy who pissed near the memorial, as I said. But yes, he is lucky that there is not mobs of people out there to get him. And I expect the judge is referring to doing that in other countries that could well end up getting you killed. Shit, it could end up getting you killed here if the wrong people happen to be nearby. Imagine this idiot, if he really didn't know what it was, decided to jump up there and start doing that during a Veterans Day parade or something like that. I'm pretty sure the emergency services would be scooping up what's left of him with a bucket. It finishes up with, most people have the good sense not to get worked up about flags. It's a shame you chose to get worked up about flags. Judge Herr acknowledged Sang's actions caused hurt to members of the armed forces and members of the public, but decided not to give him any real punishment for it. This judge is an absolute wank stain, if you ask me. Personally, I think the Justice Secretary and the Home Office need to get involved and put this sentence right, because it's actually taking the piss. You guys will have to let me know what you think down in the comments section below about it.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.